Greeting beginner band members. To get started, we're going to talk about basic setup and care of the B-flat clarinet. Some of these tips are applicable to saxophone as well, especially with how to set up the reed on the mouthpiece and how to properly set up the ligature. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So here we have a B-flat clarinet, and first of all, the number one most important thing when playing any reed-based instrument, saxophone, clarinet, soprano sax, is having the mouthpiece, the reed on the mouthpiece properly, and then also proper support with your embouchure, so the way that you're holding the mouthpiece with your mouth, not biting down on it with your teeth too much. Really, a good exercise is to do say QT, like the letters Q and T. And you do like 10 reps of those back and forth, like QT, QT, kind of slowly, and then that shape that your mouth is making, going from like the Q to T, Q, down to a Q, that round shape is really what you're striving for on your instrument, whether it's a B-flat clarinet, alto sax, or really any single reed instrument. That's what you're going for. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So before you even get to the instrument as a whole, it's very important that you know how to not only put the reed on the mouthpiece, but also how to actually hold it in your mouth with the embouchure. So let's go ahead and take a look. So you have your mouthpiece, and you know I've seen people do this, and I'm not going to name names, but I've actually seen people in our band before, and they'll get on. You know, I'll just kind of take a quick look at their mouthpiece, and they'll see something like this. And I want you to, I'm using this as an example. If my camera will focus, that'd be wonderful. I want you to take a look at this, and this is an example of how to do it wrong. And the reason why people do this is because they're in a hurry. You know, Brother Chip has said, 7:25, and they're right at 7:26, and they're worried about their band seat, and so they just throw the reed on the mouthpiece. But the thing of it is, you're going to be a very frustrated player if you're not taking that thorough step of getting the reed on the mouthpiece properly. So what you are looking for is you want the mouthpiece to be properly spaced and lined up with the rails. So on your mouthpiece, you can see it there kind of in the light. These flat edges here on the side of the opening are called the rails. And so you want this reed to be properly centered directly on those rails. And once you do that, you want to make sure that there's only just the slightest sliver of black viewable from at the top of the reed itself. So just a little sliver crescent, very tiny. I'm going to go ahead and set mine up now, and I'm going to show you on camera how it's supposed to be done properly. And what you want to do really is wet the reed prior to putting it on the mouthpiece. This is true for saxophone and clarinet. And then there's actually an additional step. When wetting, a lot of times people will just take the reed, place it in their mouth for a few seconds, maybe 30 seconds, a minute, get it nice and moistened, and then they put it on the mouthpiece. But if you take the additional step and you actually moisten the backside of the reed as well, this will give you better contact. It'll give you a better seal on the mouthpiece, and you'll get a better tone out of your instrument. So kind of more of a saxophone tip, but I also do it on my clarinet as an extra step just to get a little better tone. So a little better vibration on the reed. And so once you get it on there, usually what I do is I hold the base of the reed with my thumb, kind of get it overall lined up, and then I use my other thumb to make these little micro adjustments on the mouthpiece. And so once you get that all set up, take your ligature. Now there are tons and tons of ligatures out there. I don't know, you might just have a regular 2-screw metal ligature. You may have like a leather one, similar to what I have, but in general, the screw is going to be towards the right. So if you're questioning whether it should look like this on the mouthpiece or like this, generally the screw is on the right. And just be super, super careful putting the ligature on. Number one, you don't want to damage the reed. Reeds can be expensive, and so you don't want to damage your reed. I did that one time in the 6th grade during my beginner band while I was in school, and I never did it again. I had a metal ligature, and I split the reed right in half. It was pretty disappointing because then I had to go buy a new one. And then once you get it on there, don't tighten it all the way down. Just go double check that the reed is properly positioned on the mouthpiece. Again, if you don't do this, if you kind of skip through this step and you're not thorough, you're going to find blowing on your horn to be very difficult, and you'll be discouraged, and it may just discourage you enough to stop wanting to play. So take this kind of detail work, but make sure you take every little step to do it properly. So once you have it on there, then I'm just going to set it down here on the floor. Okay. Then you next have the barrel. Okay. And so take your barrel and you place it on the mouthpiece like so. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory on how to put this together. If you've ever seen one before, many of you are pretty familiar with instruments already. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then you're going to add this, you're going to connect it here. And a lot of times, this is where you'll adjust for tuning. So you'll take the barrel out a little bit. It should never look like that, but just to show you on camera. And so you'll take it, adjust it ever so slightly out. Just remember, the longer you make the instrument, the deeper the sound. The shorter you make the instrument, the sharper you make it. So longer is flat, shorter is sharp. So if you're playing and it's fully connected and you are too sharp, you're going to want to pull out to make it the tone drop just ever so slightly. Okay. And then also, if you find that your horn is perfectly together and you are still too sharp, that's probably an embouchure issue, because you can't put together the horn any tighter. You can't shorten the horn. You can't make the air column any shorter. So if it's still sharp and it's fully together, it's probably an embouchure issue. You need to adjust your embouchure. Okay, so here's a key little. So once you go to connect the two pieces here, you want to make sure that, see, there's that bridge key right there, and that's by pressing this key right here. You want to make sure that it's actually up, so whenever you slide them together and twist them, you don't, because what will happen if you don't hold it up, what can happen is this other piece right here, that little flat piece can slide and actually peel off the cork that is there. So you'll notice on my instrument, you can maybe make it out in the camera, there's a little piece of cork right there, and that's really super easy to peel off if you're not paying attention and careful. And then also just remember, you have to grip the horn a little bit, but if you're having to grip the horn like with an exceptional amount of force, then you need to apply cork grease to your corks, because if you are repeatedly gripping the horn in the keys and you're manipulating the horn, you're going to bend your keys and possibly even break your keys. And so just keep in mind, you generally want to hold the horn kind of like you would while you're playing. So you have your fingers on the tone holes and you kind of grip it like this. You don't ever really want to grip it like, you wouldn't want to grip it here, right? Because you start pulling on all that and that's going to bend. The keys are pretty soft metal. And then on down here, that's pretty safe to push on that. If you need to kind of grip a little bit, you can kind of push down on those keys some, and then you can kind of get a good grip. But again, you want to use as little force as possible. And this goes for, okay, so now that you have your horn together, obviously the bell goes on the very end. I was going to say this goes for sax as well, but then I remembered the saxophone is one piece pretty much, except for the neck joint and the mouthpiece. So never mind on that one. So once you have your horn together, that's the next thing you want to do is make sure, after you get done practicing and playing, we're talking about care and setup during this tutorial video, you want to use a swab on your clarinet. So couple of key things. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the mouthpiece real quick. So pop that off. So you finished playing, you finished practicing, doing all your exercises and everything. By the way, while you're watching this, you can be doing that QT exercise I told you about to build your embouchure. You should be doing that 15 minutes a day, every day. So what you're going to need is a swab, and really the best swabs are silk. You generally, in beginner kits, you can find something like this. This is cloth. This is actually, I've washed this. I've washed this over the years, but this is actually the first swab I ever got in the 6th grade. So this has been with me for a very long time. So swab, it sounds like something simple. I mean, you just take the little weighted end and you just drop it down the bell, drop it down, and then you pull through. But the thing of it is, it's actually not as simple as that. I mean, and then you pull through. But here's what happens sometimes. I don't know if my camera is going to pick this up. I hope it does. Okay, you see there's a little bitty piece of metal in there. Okay, and so what can happen, and I've done this myself, and it's actually dangerous because you can damage your horn, worst case scenario, or you can rip your your swab, which is an annoyance, and you have to buy a new one. So that's why silk is best. Not only is it'll slide through easier, but actually over years and years and years of using a cotton one, you can actually it'll wear on the inside of your instrument. And so really silk is the best. I have a cloth one, but really silk, just so y'all know, is the best. So what you want to do is just make sure when you place the swab in the bell that it's not all knotted up. Like sometimes I've seen this happen. It's like it comes out of your horn case kind of like knotted, and then the kid sticks it down the bell, and then now they're trying to pull through like this big blob. Okay, or something like I just did. I wasn't being careful, and you can't see through because it's blocked, but the weighted end of the swab gets stuck in the horn. Now it's, that can also get tangled around that metal bit that's down in there. You can see it from this end as well. And so you just want to be gentle. This is a delicate instrument. This is not thrown around. You need to be careful with it. And so whenever you're swabbing it, just very gently, just slowly, make sure everything's smooth and flat, and then you just pull it through real gentle. And that removes any excess moisture that gets built up in the horn. And so just kind of a little quick fact, a lot of people think it's spit. It's actually not really spit. It's more of the condensed water vapor. So as you exhale, the air is very moist, and as it goes through the horn, it cools down, and all that moisture cools and condenses on the inside. So it actually really is mostly water. There might be a little spit in there, but some people kind of get grossed out by that. It's really water vapor that's condensed. So it's not that disgusting. It's just like you'd see on a window or in your car or in your parents' car. And something else you're going to want to pick up is a reed guard. And so this is a safe way to keep your reeds. If you don't have a reed guard, it's real simple. You can actually use, a lot of times your reeds will come in a case like this, and that works. I mean, if you don't have a reed guard, this is fine. But it's kind of a disorganized way. You end up with a few reeds in your clarinet box. This is just a nice, simple way to do that. Reed guard, and actually I have a reed guard that's built for a saxophone, but it's the B-flat clarinet reeds fit in it as well. So I play both of the instruments. So I just have one reed guard for both of my horns. It's pretty simple. So that's what you're going to want to do with that. So make sure you moisten your reed, place it on the mouthpiece properly. You're practicing embouchure technique. Another thing when you're playing your horn, just kind of a basic, is breathing. So imagine you're breathing in 3 dimensions, like your chest is puffed out, your shoulders rise ever so slightly, and your back is you're filling out. Like imagine a barrel. Like I'll use my hands here. So you're trying to fill the space. So when you breathe, you're filling the whole space. And a lot of times what happens is people, they keep imagine like this is, you're looking at somebody top down, and this is their back, and this is their front side. And so what happens when they breathe, they barely go in and out, because most of the air, most of the energy is causing their shoulders to raise up. So they kind of only breathe in 2 dimensions. In other words, it's kind of like they're just going up like this, lifting their shoulders. But what you want to do is you want to breathe in 3 dimensions. So you're puffing your chest out some. You're got good embouchure. You got good posture. You're sitting up straight, and you breathe in very deep. And then you want to practice breathing, because if you're playing your instrument and you are breathing as normal, if your breathing is comfortable to you, you're doing it wrong. You want to breathe. When you're playing an instrument, if you're having proper breath support, it will not come naturally to you. And so just a reminder about breathing, practicing your embouchure, and that goes for clarinet and saxophone. I'm sure we have some saxophone players now watching this thinking, what about saxophone? Well, the mouthpiece stuff, that is all the same for saxophone. The breathing stuff, all the same. The embouchure stuff, mostly the same. There's a little bit of variety there, but it's mostly the same. So a couple of additional things you can do. You can actually buy pad savers. And so it's like it's kind of like what you put inside of a saxophone. And let me get it real quick. Okay, so this is a pad saver for the soprano saxophone. And basically it's similar to this. And in fact, you can even get them for flute. And so you put it inside your clarinet, and it helps save your pads from the moisture damaging them. So that's just kind of an extra thing you can do. And so let's take a look at a saxophone here. All right, so we have the alto, saxophone. And a couple of things with the alto, wiping it down regularly is a good idea. That helps keep the metal from getting tarnished. You'll want to have one of these, and generally with the alto sax, you'll have the neck joint off, okay? And then your pad saver will go down in here like so, okay? A lot of times this is actually for soprano, so it's a little skinnier, but the alto sax is quite a bit more fuzzy, and that just helps wick the moisture away from your pads that are on the back side of the tone hole covers. So these very large pads here can get damaged from the excess moisture. Okay, so couple of things with this alto saxophone. Number one, you'll notice these keys over here. Generally, you're not going to use them, especially right now learning as a beginner, but they tend to get extremely bent up because they're kind of just sticking out there on their own. So if you ever need to lay your instrument down, you'll want to lay it down on the opposite side of this. You don't want it resting on those keys. Obviously, you still have keys over here, but they're pretty flat, so they're not going to really take a lot of pressure. So just very gently laying it down like that to keep it from getting bent and damaged. You have all these rails coming down here. So the saxophone is a very mechanical instrument. There's a lot of distance to cover. I mean, you're pressing keys over here and it's causing things to move down here. And so you have a lot of mechanics happening. All these rails can get bent up pretty good, and it really does not take much for one of these to bend for your instrument to stop playing very well, which is very frustrating. And then you may end up discouraged and just quit because your horn's not playing well. So what you got to realize is all these tone holes have to be exactly perfectly covered by a pad. And if you drop the horn, if you bend one of these rails, it can cause that pad to not go over the hole very well. So general care, this is for any instrument, clarinet, sax, woodwind, brass. Dropping the instrument is an absolute, that's got to be, like, mark that as a sin in your mind. All the time I see it, people walking through the bandstands and they're knocking over people's instruments and they're hitting stuff and they're just kind of being reckless. Be careful of other people's instruments. Be mindful of your own instrument. If you leave it out, just kind of hanging out, it's probably going to get knocked over. I've had my instrument damaged from other people not taking care of other people's stuff before in the church band, just not paying attention. So be very mindful of your instrument. You want to stand, especially an alto sax. It's such a large, heavy instrument. You definitely want a stand. If you don't happen to have a stand, again, you need to set it at least in your chair or under your chair. Make sure these keys are facing up. Okay, so here is the neck joint and the mouthpiece. I'm not going to go over all of the procedure on how to moisten the reed and place it on the mouthpiece. It's all the exact same stuff. The ligature, all that's the same. Tuning for an alto sax, it's a little different, but it's not too different. Same concept. If you need to go, if you're too sharp, you pull out. If you're too flat, you push in. It's pretty simple. And so if you don't have a stand, if you don't have a mouthpiece guard, I forgot to mention that with the clarinet, and I'll go grab one real quick. Super important to keep your reeds from getting damaged. Mouthpiece guards are awesome. And so get your mouthpiece guard. And generally they come with a mouthpiece. So, but if you have a used horn, you might not come with them. So put the mouthpiece guard on. And then what you can do is you can take your head joint. Not your head joint. You can take your neck joint in the mouthpiece, and you can actually place it inside the bell. And so it's pretty safe in there. It's not going to get damaged. Obviously, you don't want to be rattling it around and being rough. Always be mindful that this too is a delicate instrument, and it's very large, and so it's actually more likely to get damaged because of the weight of it. If it drops, it's probably going to cause something to break. And so, again, you're not going to be swabbing this instrument like you would with the clarinet, but what you'll want is some kind of a pad saver like this. This is for soprano. It's pretty skinny, but you'll want something, it'll be a lot fuzzier and fatter for the alto saxophone. So the soprano saxophone, a lot of people say, oh, hey, is that a golden clarinet? Well, not quite. Although the shape is similar, it is definitely not a clarinet. All the keys are, the fingerings, or I shouldn't say the fingerings, but the way that you finger notes is identical to an alto sax. In fact, all saxophones' fingerings are identical. kind of like clarinet, B flat, or bass. It's all the same type of fingerings, but it just makes different notes. And so what you want to be mindful of is, number one, make sure, and this is for alto sax too, I forgot to mention that earlier, but you want to make sure that your the screw here is tightened, so that way the neck joint is not moving around on you. You'll want to make sure that, again, the reed is properly on there, and also make sure you're using the proper reed for your instrument. And so, you know, the soprano saxophone reed, it looks kind of similar to an E flat clarinet reed, but just don't, make sure, because again, I told you earlier, you got to make sure that it's lined up properly with the mouthpiece and the rail is on the mouthpiece. So just make sure that all the adjustments are the same there. Soprano, alto, clarinet, all of these instruments, breathing is the same. You're breathing in 3 dimensions. Big open breaths. Your embouchure is similar on the clarinet to the saxophone. With saxophone, though, there is a little bit of a difference, and that's that on your lower notes, you'll generally blow a little bit, maybe a little harder. You'll take in a little more mouthpiece, or you will kind of like loosen your embouchure just a little bit to allow the reed to vibrate better. But other than that, you'll want to have a tuner for your practicing. I really like this Korg tuner. I know it might be difficult right now to get one. I know Amazon orders are delayed, and music stores may not be open. So to grab one, it might be difficult, but I really recommend getting one that's a tuner and a metronome. It's just nice to have. If you don't happen to have one, there are a dozen apps out there that you can use. So make sure you have that. Make sure you're learning to play in tune. Make sure that you are listening to yourself play in tune, because you have to develop your ear. You want to develop what a good tone sounds like. And so just a couple of quick, if you want to kind of just get started, a couple of reminders is on the B flat clarinet, the open note is it's F. Okay, and so on the alto sax, get this set up. And remember, and I forgot too, on the saxophones, and actually some clarinets, they have a spot for it too, your neck strap. So get something that's comfortable. If it's cutting into your neck, it's no good. Get something better. If it's not affording you the right angle on the horn, so like if you're tightening it all the way down and the angle's still weird, get a different one. So open on the alto is E. Okay, and then open on the soprano is B. I'll play you a B real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of what the horn should sound like. Also, you can look on, there's various sources to get the proper sound of an instrument. Okay, so they're all in different keys, and so they got different open notes. So thank y'all so much. Remember, be mindful of your horn. Don't neglect it. Take care of it. Cork grease. I forgot to mention this. Make sure you are greasing your corks. It generally looks like chapstick. I've even heard of people using it as chapstick. I don't personally practice that, but it looks like this. It's real simple. Cork shield is what this is called. And so cork grease is a dime a dozen. You can get it all over the place, different brands. And so make sure you're using this. This applies to the alto. Really all woodwind instruments have cork somewhere. So you're going to have to use this whether you're playing sax or clarinet. So thank y'all so much, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.